Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Peer Guidance. I want to get out there and give a big shout out to our sponsor, the Alberta Technology Symposium. It is going to showcase some of the great tech people and companies that are in this province. We have panels full. We're about 41-ish speakers. I believe 16 or 17 of them are women speakers. So we have a group of people that are going to come in again. The website will be in the comment section shortly here. You can click on there, look at your tickets, go to the website, look at the speakers, and go from there. But I also want to dive right into today's conversation because I think it's going to be a good one. Clifford, the founder of CTTCoach.com and O2Y Yellow, how are you today?
Great. How about yourself, Jade?
Well, you know what? It's a great Wednesday. It's a little cold. It's sunny, blue skies. I can see the mountains, so I can't complain.
Same here.
I'm getting ready to go. I'm getting ready for another streak of warm weather, though. So that's all I want.
Yeah, we've had a pretty awesome winter, that's for sure.
Exactly. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give a brief introduction of Cliff, and then we'll get after it.
Okay, awesome.
Cliff is Canada's one of the most recommended career transition and transformation coach with 15 plus years experience in oil and gas, IT, renewable energy, medicine, education, wellness, mental health, manufacturing, transportation, logistics, and construction. He has had the privilege of coaching over 2,500 clients across 6 continents in both English and Spanish. Known for being approachable, creative, fun, and effective, and surprisingly intuitive. So we've got to know each other, Cliff, over the last year and change, and I can say this is bang on. You know, it's been fun working with you and fun getting to know you, and of course most of that is over a few beers. So I guess I mean we want to kind of talk about this, great resignation, or what's been going on for the last 2 years, that has you, excited and brimming with enthusiasm and hope. So, let's please share what your thoughts are going on in the ecosystem right now.
Yeah, so if we can go like way out there, I'd like to share first of all with you a type of sensation. When I was a little kid growing up, we had the great fortune to live on the Mediterranean in Spain, and I'd go to the beach all the time. And for anybody that's been playing in the waves, there's that kind of sensation when the water kind of sucks back into the ocean and a big wave is coming. And I think right now, as the world is opening up again, we're kind of in that situation where we know things are coming and a lot of changes are about to happen. And whether they take 2 days or 2 months or 2 years, there's definitely going to be winners and losers at the end of it. And I'd like to outline just 5 areas, but I mean this basically applies to any area of life. But the first one I want to talk about a little bit is work. As you mentioned, there's this whole idea of the Great Resignation. And so, what basically happened over the last 2 years is that the whole planet has been forced into this lockdown. And so basically as individuals, we are forced into a type of hermitage. And what happens to people, when they go into a hermitage and they lock themselves up in a cabin or a cave somewhere, is they ask themselves existential questions, like what's the meaning of life and why am I here and what am I supposed to be doing? And so people actually did that, and turns out a lot of people potentially really struggled with that question. We see, upticks in suicides and drug addiction and that kind of stuff. But we also, I think a lot of people kind of had a healthy outcome where they realized, oh, my life is not on track, and I don't necessarily want to go back to how it was before. And so when we look at this question, for me, as an integral coach, I look at situations from a physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual perspective. This kind of great resignation problem for me is actually a spiritual problem because it has to do with meaning and purpose. It's not something you can solve mathematically. Like you can't go and interview 10 people and 8 of them say, oh, engineering is great. Then you say, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. That's going to give me meaning and purpose. Like meaning and purpose is something that comes from within you. And so you actually need the skill set to look within. And so it's a completely different process than what we've been socialized to do or educated to do. So I think the nature of work is going to change. The nature of commerce is going to change. The other day I was driving down Bow Trail and I was thinking about, somebody that's starting a business that's a brick and mortar business. Like obviously COVID is not the last virus that's ever going to come through. And so potentially this is not the one and only lockdown we're going to experience. And so how does a brick and mortar business make sense? And I think if you're not thinking in terms of e-commerce, like before it was kind of like you could have brick and mortar or you could do e-commerce, and but I think nowadays, like obviously everybody's going to have to do some type of e-commerce, some kind of home delivery model. And basically at the same time, I think people that were doing e-commerce are going to see, wow, there's a lot more real estate available. It'd be great to have access to physical space, but I don't really need, let's say, a traditional store. Maybe I just want to be able to display my products, 2 days a week, or maybe I need the space to do some shipping or some assembly or whatever, but I don't need it full time. So I think there's going to be more a model towards some space becoming shared space and different relationships like that. So, the nature of commerce, the nature of distribution channels, all of that is going to continue changing. I think the nature of money is going to change. So, this when Trudeau basically froze bank accounts from people who basically have different political opinions from him, he really revealed a big vulnerability in our monetary system, which is all debt-based, right? So I think cryptocurrency might be a stepping stone into the future, maybe not something else. But ultimately, even if you look at cryptocurrency, what are we doing? We're monetizing, electricity and computing power, which if you're really into like sci-fi films makes sense. But I think the future really is, and I think this is going to sound crazy to people, but I think every person's going to have their own currency. In the same way that, 20, 30 years ago, all TV came through 4 or 5 channels. And then all of a sudden YouTube came along and everybody has a channel, like you're a TV personality now, so to speak, right? And there's going to be different systems where it's actually our effort and creativity and our ability to provide goods and services to the marketplace that's going to create the value of our own currency. And I know it sounds crazy, but I also know people that are working on these kind of systems. So I don't think it's going to end with cryptocurrency, but I do think we're going to move to a model where there's going to be multiple currencies, and so again, like if you look at all these things, in terms of your relationships with your employees, if you look at how you distribute, and source your, source your raw materials and distribute your products, if you look at how you charge for things or how you pay for things, all of that is up in the air now. And I think when the dust settles, it's going to settle in a different form than what it looked like in the past.
Yeah, we've had many conversations on here about cryptocurrency, and even at the Alberta Technology Symposium, we're going to have a lot of cryptocurrency conversations in there, whether it be NFT, securities, AML, those types of things. But, that's a conversation for another day.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess kind of getting back to, talking about the people, what can professionals and entrepreneurs do to reinvent themselves or meet the needs and opportunities of this, new economic landscape that we may see coming?
Well, I think that the big shift is really all our systems are based on owing and debt. And I think there's an opportunity to, double and triple down on that, or there's an opportunity to create an alternative system where it's actually based on ownership. And the first thing really a person can own, and I would say should own, is themselves. And so for over 50,000 years, we've known that people exist in, the physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual dimension. And I think we've gotten this far in human evolution. It's been okay to only focus on some of those areas. If we look at the Western world, we're very focused on the intellectual aspect of things, and we're very focused on the material aspect of things, but we pretty much ignore the emotional and spiritual dimensions. And when we look at a problem like the Great Reset, that's primarily a spiritual problem. So I think we're getting to a point where we succeeded so far, seeing ourselves as fragments of something, but now really to move forward, we need to really appreciate our full potential. And, I think one of the basic things I would do is suggest this for people to get access to really high-end assessments. I use something called the Berkman method. It's probably the best assessment on the planet, where you can really get a sense of what your true potential is, what your true strengths are, what your true weaknesses are, and then you can develop strategies accordingly. And especially for entrepreneurs, if you're an employee, you can really specialize in one area. So like if you're an accountant, you can specialize in accounting and systems and that kind of stuff, and you never have to worry about sales or marketing or anything like that. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're responsible for the whole thing. And everybody you're going to either be a jack of all trades, which means you're kind of good in everything, but not really an expert in anything, or you're going to be an expert in some areas, which means you're going to be weak in other areas. So I think really the future is an opportunity for people to really discover who they are. There's some excellent assessments that we can use to do that. There's some, a little bit of coaching that's part of that. And then developing strategies that are going to meet the future demands. It's the same with the education system. Like, the education system became irrelevant once technology advanced faster than the education system could keep up. And if we look at, training employees in the future and what kind of educational credentials, you hire people with, I think we're going to move away more and more from that, 4-year degree where you learn some things, but a lot of it is outdated. And we're going to be looking much more at very specialized certifications and kind of like micro learning opportunities and opportunities to gain skill sets, not just in theory, but potentially as a practicum or something like that. And everything, we can reconstruct everything in a way that's much more effective, much more resilient, and requires a lot less resources.
Oh, definitely. I mean, things are changing, right? I mean, I've been an advocate of work's a thing you do, not a place you go. But I've been a 26-year work from home guy, right? I've been effective at it. My wife's not very good at it. She can't wait to get back to the office. Things are going to be changing. However it works, how we're going to manage people, especially if some are here, some are there, those types of things. So I guess kind of, moving forward, let's just say how, what opportunities have arisen, from the last 2 years, on your side to help, help people transition, whether it be to remote work, whether it to be partial, or whether it to be, in office. Has any of all that changed?
Yeah, so I think basically one of the most important concepts to wrap our heads around is this idea of transcending but including. So if we think of humanity's history, when we went from agrarian to industrial, we didn't get rid of all the farms, we just industrialized the farms. And then when we went from industrial to the information age, we kept the farms, we just now computerized them, right? And automated them. And so now we're moving into the human age where it's really, we're going to have an opportunity to really unlock the human potential. And so we're still going to need, farms and all the basic kind of infrastructure, but the approach now is to, instead of seeing humans as a human resource, it's actually seeing them as a source for something. And so there's a lot of opportunities for professionals to approach, to transform their careers into something that really speaks to them. I think there's opportunities for entrepreneurs to provide whole new ways of, creating products and systems. And, if we look at supply chains, I think, we were in this model where it's almost like the Hunger Games, where all these parts of the planet are being specialized into one thing. And I think we need to move away from that, just like we've moved away from mainframe computers and move into localized networks that are interconnected with other networks. And so basically moving from like a mainframe system to an internet type system, if we look at computing. So we need to do that with supply chains too, and be able to source things locally. Because we saw that, when push came to shove, some countries just said, okay, we're just going to stop exporting, critical medical supplies, for example, right? So obviously we've taken globalization as far as we can, and probably way too far. And we need to now come and create much more resilient systems that are local and interdependent, and also can connect with larger systems worldwide. So there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs. I think there's a lot of opportunities for professionals to create something new and exciting that's going to work much better for them and others.
Well, I mean, innovation is always moving, right? I mean, whether or not it changes the supply chain. I mean, that's a long ways away, right? Growing our own food locally, things along those lines. But we see a lot of opportunity here in Alberta on the tech side, and I see it, live it, and every single day. So it always gets me excited about the future of this province and the people that we have here. Especially a lot of the people that used to work in oil and gas have become entrepreneurs, have started new things, and we've got such an educated society here and entrepreneurial driven that it's exciting. And I mean, and and we're seeing the investment follow along with it. So when you have these people that are, go through their career change, or they want to find their dream job and things along those lines, I mean, obviously you can help them. But what about the younger people? What about the kids coming out of high school? You're talking about how we have to change the way we do things. Maybe it's a SATE, maybe it's these micro things, maybe it's not a 4-year degree. How are you able to help some of our younger kids, maybe in high school and or university, with their careers?
Well, I mean, having worked with over 2,500 people, I can tell you that it's a shocking large percentage of those people have basically just fallen into careers, and the moment they fell into careers was when they were young. And so this education system we have right now would work well in the 1950s, where you chose one career and you went to school and you got one job at one company and you were there for your whole career, and then you graduate. I mean, you retired with your golden watch and all that kind of stuff. But it's deteriorated from there into something totally different. And so I think the first thing is, again, they need really high-end assessments to really figure out what their strengths are, what their motivators are, what they're going to enjoy doing for, many decades. And then instead of thinking of like developing a solution, I'm going to become this profession, really what you want to do is develop a strategy. So we offer coaching services so that they can develop a strategy. So it's more of instead of giving somebody a fish, it's, teaching them to fish and giving them a strategy, not just for, how to pursue, the topic of their career, so what they're going to be doing, but also how to manage their career. Like, how do you create resilience and flexibility and adaptability inside of a chosen career path? And usually I'm trying to work with students in a way that they develop, 3 different career paths. And when I work with adults, I talk to them about developing multiple income streams and having multiple options instead of just being, having all your eggs in one basket the whole way. So I would say the first thing is really assessment. The second thing is developing a strategy instead of just having one option. And then there's a million things that I wish I would have done when I was in university or in college that I didn't do, that I share with young people nowadays. So, one basic tip would be develop a network while you're in school. Reach out to people in industry and start building that network, while you're in first year of your schooling. And then when you graduate, you actually have a network of people that you've built over 4 years. Your odds of getting a job when you graduate is going to be infinitely higher than if you graduate and say, okay, now what? Let's go online and look at some job postings.
Yeah, I think networking is the number one thing, one of the number one things to help your success. I mean, it is people underestimate it. I gave a speech here to about 45 students last week about networking, how to network, why to network, those types of things. And I was drilled for a long time from them. I mean, basically it was just an open Q&A section. So
I tell my clients, if they're looking for a job or something like that, 90% of your success depends on your networking.
Absolutely.
And to networking well, you have to know yourself well. You need to be able to describe how you differentiate yourself in the marketplace. So a lot of people think, let's say I'm an accountant, or let's say I'm an engineer. They say, well, I can differentiate myself from my family members because they're not engineers, or my friends, I'm oil and gas and their pipeline or whatever. But what you have to really think about is when you're competing for a role, is put yourself in a room with 200, 700, 2,000 people, and they all have your past job title and your experience in the same industry. Now, what makes you stand out? So that's actually what differentiation is you can't, if you're an engineer and you differentiate yourself from a doctor, that's easy. But how you differentiate yourself from an engineer that has the same experience and the same background as you, and that's really what you need to do to win. So you need to know yourself, you need to know how you're different, and then you need to be able to communicate that effectively. And so those are all things that I help people do in coaching, because unless you're in the top 5% of every step of the process, then you're not going to get a job offer.
And I would even go more grassroots, saying if you're not being yourself, you're not going to get a job. So I mean, rather than out there and being it, you just have to, be yourself. People are going to hire you because they like you, they believe in you, and they see your future, not because you had a 95 over an 85. But But I mean, here's Pete. Pete has a question here saying, if I have a company that wants to align people skills with their purpose, how would I do that?
Well, I think you have two options. One of them would be to really get to know them over a period of like maybe 10 years. And the other option is to bring somebody like me in, and I can do assessments with everybody, and we can figure out exactly what that is in a matter of hours, and then we can see how we align people with purpose and meaning, and often it can be shifting roles or shifting the emphasis of a role, or for example, a lot of technical people get pushed into leadership roles, but not every technical person is actually good at the people side of leadership. So we have these weird kind of like climb one ladder systems, and I work with a lot of technical people that really aren't suited to leadership, and we develop strategies for them to dive deeper into their technical expertise and evolve that way, which is what actually speaks to them and has meaning and purpose, than forcing them into something that they're not interested in or not suited to, but it's the only way they can get a raise and advance financially, right? So it's kind of so I would suggest I always go back to assessments, because the assessments I use basically is the equivalent for me spending 10 years with somebody, getting to know them. And like even when Jade is saying, being authentic, it's, of course you need to be authentic. Like, I mean, that's definitely a fundamental point. But then how do you communicate your authenticity, right? So I've got reports that actually describe things numerically. So if you're 95 percentile on something, I mean, you're not going to say that to a person in an interview, but you know that you're way up there in terms of that variable. So let's say if you're an extrovert and you're 95 percentile extroverted, knowing that number actually tells you a lot about how extroverted you are, and that's a differentiator.
I'm still here, Cliff, so just keep going.
I don't know
what happened.
I had a brief moment of panic. I'm like,
That's okay. That's okay.
I think Jay just lost his internet connection.
No, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, it's all good.
Okay, we're good. As long as no one needs to see my ugly mug, so we're good on that end of it. But
are you kidding? You're the eye candy of this operation.
I don't know what happened, but I'll try and fix it here. But hey, I know you're also, not only do you help people, you're actually starting to train people to become certified CTT coaching. So why don't you talk about that and the process and what you're looking for and who you'd like to add to your team?
Yeah, so I'm basically looking for people that are really excited about the future and see that everything's up for grabs, and everything can potentially be changed for the better. And so basically, our clients, we look at for clients in 3 different categories. So one of them is young people, we talked about, 15 to 25. And the other would be professionals who either want to find a new job or a job that fits them better, or move into entrepreneurship. We also work with first-time entrepreneurs. And so basically, I'm looking for associates who would be, leaders or coaches or even counselors that have a good understanding on how to move people through change, that either want to specialize in working with young people or want to specialize in working with, mid-career professionals, that kind of thing, or very senior leaders who want to join us more in a mentorship type of, master coach role, and who want to leverage their network and kind of look more at a semi-retirement type option, where they can leverage their network and their many years of experience in industry, and they basically want to create a type of legacy and kind of pass the ball on to the next generations. So we're basically looking for associates in those 3 areas.
Nice.
As well as clients. And I mean, I just think we have an opportunity to create a lot of cool things, but it's not, the idea of creating like a better mousetrap. I think humanity itself, the consciousness level of humanity, is evolving, and we actually have maps that show that, and we know where we're at and where we're headed. And basically, we can either create businesses and products and services that meet how humanity is changing, or we can just ignore it to our own peril. So I think basically, this might sound weird to you, but when I coach a lot of my clients, I often realize that And I share this with them that their current problems are actually the result of a type of success they've had. And
Yep.
as human beings, we're so adaptable that when we succeed at something, eventually we get bored or we just adapt to the new normal, so to speak. And then we're excited about the next step. So we have like a built-in mechanism that wants us to grow and evolve. And I think a lot of people are pessimistic about the future and concerned about a lot of things, but they really all have opportunities built into them. And I'm quite excited about moving away from owing systems and helping people own things like their career and their their currency and all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. And just wanted to give Damien thanks for the kind words on LinkedIn. He says, thought-worthy perspectives, Cliff, and he can see the future unfolding the same way you do. So that's on LinkedIn. We can't show that one because this only allows us to show on a couple platforms, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see definitely, building a team, having people out there. So if anybody wants more information on that, just click on the CTTCoach.com. The link is in the website. Reach out to Clifford, and he'd be able to help you, sit down with you, have a coffee with you, talk about the different different programs that they have. If you want to come on full-time, part-time, that type of a thing. So I think it's it could be a very good opportunity for someone who's looking to be part of a team that doesn't want to be that solo coach, because it's always easier being, having someone walking that journey with somebody and not doing it alone.
Yeah. Thank you, Jade.
Yes.
I mean, I've one of the tips I give my clients is at every point in time in my career, I have at least 4 to 6 advisors, and sometimes they're paid coaches, sometimes they're mentors, sometimes they're experts in industry. But that's a basic tool, and for me in the professional toolkit, if you're an entrepreneur or employee or professional, whatever, you need to have experts in your corner, and you can rotate them out and bring different experts as you grow and develop and things change. But for sure, I think we're in an environment now where it's almost impossible for people to succeed on their own.
Oh, I agree. Couldn't agree. It's a journey that you don't need to take alone.
Yeah.
But I always get sad when these interviews are coming to an end, because it's such a great discussion week after week after week. And this one has been no different, Cliff. So I thank you for, spending your time and sharing your knowledge with us. But I do have one more question for you. So if you had one piece of advice for a startup entrepreneur, what would that be?
I would say that the main advice would be stay awake and curious, because when we are entrepreneurs or we are professionals, really we're paid for what we know. We're compensated for what we know, but there's a position where you can step into, if you know a whole bunch of stuff, where you actually step into not knowing. And I think the people that are able to, find be comfortable in a place of not knowing and be very alert and curious and pay attention and see how things are changing around them are the ones that are going to be able to adapt and respond to what happens when the wave actually crashes, and they're going to be actually able to surf that wave instead of being bowled over by it. So I would say curiosity and alertness, and don't relax into, oh, we'll just go back into the old normal. I think that's done. And stay really curious and alert, and watch Jade's telling it like it is to hear a wide variety of ideas and thoughts and strategies, and keep your brain limber that way.
Oh, it's funny. That again, I thought that question would have been done, months and months and months ago, and it's not. Like, actually, I should almost say years ago. And but I get such great advice, and I mean, that's some advice that I never heard, and I like sharing it, and I think people benefit from hearing different people from different paths, from different walks, from different careers, that have something good to offer. And it's always simple. It's usually less than a minute, and it's something that's great. So again, I really appreciate you coming on today, Clifford, and sharing your knowledge and time. And again, if anybody wants to reach out, please go to CTTCoach.com, click on the website in the comments section, and you'll be able to reach out to Cliff and have any questions and he'll meet you for coffee. So again, thanks again, Clifford, and I hope everybody and yourself enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Jade.
All right, have a great day, everybody.